You have already lost time you will never get back. And somewhere inside you, you already know exactly where. There's a specific kind of pain that doesn't announce itself loudly. It doesn't come from failure or humiliation or loss. Not exactly. It comes much quieter than that. It comes on a Tuesday afternoon when nothing in particular is wrong, and you're staring at something. A wall, a window, a face you've grown distant from, and you feel it. That low pressurized feeling sitting in the middle of your chest. Not grief, not quite sadness. Something more like the awareness that time moved while you were standing still. This video is about that feeling, where it comes from, what it's trying to tell you, and, without pretending this is simple, what you can actually do with it before more time passes. No motivation speeches, no, you've got this. Just something honest about the only life you're actually living. There's a cognitive trick the human mind plays on itself, and it plays it constantly without your permission. Psychologists call it temporal discounting. The basic idea is this: the further a consequence is in the future, the less real it feels, the less weight it carries, the less urgency it triggers in your body and your choices. Your brain treats future you almost like a stranger, someone you vaguely care about but don't feel deeply responsible for, in the same way you feel responsible for yourself right now, today, in this moment. And the consequence of that? Most people spend the first half of their lives living on a quiet assumption that there will be time. Time to pursue the thing. Time to have the conversation. Time to become the person they keep meaning to become. Time to start. Time to say it. Time to leave. Time to try. That assumption is not malicious. It's not stupidity. It's just how the brain works when the stakes feel abstract. But here's what no one really prepares you for: the moment when the future stops feeling far away. It doesn't happen with a warning. There's no formal announcement. One day, something shifts. Maybe it's a number that appears on a birthday. Maybe it's a diagnosis in someone close to you. Maybe it's something as small as running into an old friend you haven't seen in years and realizing you've both changed in directions you didn't choose. And in that moment, the abstraction collapses. Later stops being a safe holding space for your unlived life. It becomes a question, with a deadline you suddenly feel. The people who describe this moment rarely describe it as inspiring. They describe it as terrifying. We talk about regret like it's a lesson, like it's something clean, and you look back, you identify the mistake, you learn from it, you move on. That's the polished version, the version that fits in a quote. The real version is less elegant. Real regret is not a lesson, it's a weight. It's the specific texture of knowing that a version of your life existed. A version where you said yes, or said no, or showed up differently. And that version is no longer accessible, not because you failed at something, but because you waited. Because fear was louder than desire for long enough that the window closed. A researcher named Bronnie Ware spent years working in palliative care, sitting with people in the final weeks of their lives, listening to what surfaced in them when everything unessential had been stripped away. What she found wasn't complicated. The most common regrets were not about things people had done. They were about things people had never done. The career left unlived because it felt impractical. The feeling left unexpressed because vulnerability felt too dangerous. The life half-lived because the full version seemed like too much to ask for. What's striking about those regrets isn't that they're dramatic. It's that they're so ordinary, so quiet. The accumulated weight of small hesitations, of choosing comfort over aliveness, again and again, until the sum of those choices became the shape of a life. And here's the part that is genuinely hard to sit with. Those people were not weak. They were not cowards. Most of them were doing what seemed reasonable at the time. They were managing fear. They were being responsible. They were waiting until conditions were better, until they were ready, until it felt right. They were living the way most of us live right now. There's a word we use that I want to question for a moment. Comfort zone. We say it like it's actually comfortable, Like the thing we're protecting ourselves from is pain, and the thing we're staying inside is ease. But pay attention to what's actually inside the comfort zone. For most people, anxiety is in there. The low hum of, I should be doing more, that's in there. The scroll, the half-finished projects, the relationships that have gone flat but haven't been addressed, the career that pays the bills but quietly hollows you out, the distance between who you are and who you sense you could be, that distance lives inside the comfort zone. What we call the comfort zone is not a place of ease. It's a place of managed suffering. It's the suffering you've learned to tolerate because at least it's familiar. At least it's predictable. The pain of staying is so well worn it doesn't surprise you anymore. The pain of change, on the other hand, that pain is sharp and new and unpredictable. And the brain hates unpredictable pain far more than it hates chronic familiar pain. So we stay and we manage and we call it being reasonable. But what it actually is when this is worth sitting with, is a slow transaction. You're trading the sharp discomfort of growth for the chronic discomfort of stagnation. And that trade feels safe until the day it doesn't. Until the day the arithmetic becomes undeniable. So, here is the actual problem. It's not that people don't know what they want. Most people, if they were honest in a quiet room with no one watching, have a fairly clear sense of what they want, the relationship they want, the work they want, the version of themselves they want to inhabit. The problem isn't knowledge. The problem is the gap between knowing and doing. Fear lives there, self-doubt lives there, perfectionism lives there, wearing the disguise of preparation. Procrastination lives there, wearing the disguise of patience. And the most insidious thing in that gap, the story you've told yourself, often for so long that it feels like a fact rather than a narrative, about why you can't, why now isn't the right time, why the risk is too great. That story is not the truth. It is protection. It is your nervous system doing exactly what it was designed to do, keeping you from danger. The problem is that your nervous system cannot distinguish between a tiger and an unanswered email, between a physical threat and the fear of trying something important and failing at it. And so the protection that was meant to save your life ends up quietly narrowing it. Here is something nobody told you clearly enough. You will never feel ready for the things that matter. Readiness, the version of it that feels like certainty, like solid ground, does not precede the important actions of a life. It follows them. It is built by doing the thing while afraid, not by waiting until the fear disappears. The person who started the business before they were ready. The one who had the honest conversation before they knew exactly how it would land. Those people did not feel ready. They felt terrified, and they moved anyway. And that movement, that imperfect, shaky, uncertain movement, is where actual life is made. Let's talk about motivation for a second. We wait for motivation like it's a weather system, something that arrives from outside. But motivation is not a weather system. It is a result. It follows action more often than it precedes it. The discipline to begin, even when nothing in you wants to begin, is not glamorous. It feels like forcing yourself to sit down at the desk when the desk is the last place you want to be. And yet, that dull, unglamorous act of beginning, repeated consistently, is the actual mechanism by which lives change. Not the moment of inspiration, not the perfect plan. Just begin again, even today when you don't feel like it. There's a version of responsibility we talk about a lot, responsibility to others, but there's a version we talk about far less, responsibility to yourself. The responsibility to take your own life seriously, to treat your time as finite and therefore precious, to refuse to spend another decade living primarily in reaction, reacting to circumstances, to expectations, to the fear of judgment, rather than in authorship. Because here's what living in reaction looks like. It looks like busyness with no direction. It looks like the vague but persistent feeling that you are always preparing to start living, rather than actually doing it. And no one can interrupt that pattern for you. You are the one who has to decide, quietly, repeatedly, that your life belongs to you. I want to tell you something, and I want you to actually hear it. You are not going to be ready. You are not going to have more time next year than you do right now. That version of the future is not coming. What is available, the only thing that has ever been available, is now. This moment, with its imperfect conditions and its uncertainty. This is the raw material. This is what you have, and the only question that actually matters, is what you're going to do with it. Here is what I want to leave you with. Your time is finite. Most people live without ever really landing in that felt sense of finitude, but the ones who do, the ones who actually let it in, find it to be the most clarifying thing that ever happened to them. It strips away the excuses. It leaves you with the actual question, what do I want my time to be for? Growth comes from doing difficult things. Not because difficulty is virtuous, but because the things that matter require you to move toward discomfort rather than away from it. And finally, accept what has already happened. The past cannot be rewound. The energy spent wishing you could rewind is energy not being spent on the life still in front of you. You do not live there. You live here. In this imperfect, urgent, unrepeatable present. Build something you can look back on, not with pride as performance, but with the quiet recognition that when you had the choice between showing up and not showing up, you mostly showed up. That's not a perfect life, but it's a real one. And real is the only kind worth living.